In this video, we're going to take a look at some compound interest questions that we can't use the formula in. So this example talks about Senan, and he has €3,000 and would like to invest it for 2 years. A special savings account is offering a rate of 3%. So remember from the last one, we would need to identify our interest rate. So offering a rate of 3% for the first year and a higher rate for the second year. Tax of 40% will be deducted each year from the interest earned. That's another key point there that we haven't come across yet. Tax of 40% after each year. So on the interest earned is the other thing. So there's key information, and it's about identifying that and pulling it out for ourselves. And then we have what we put in. Now, so another way of thinking about compound interest where we can't use the formula. So why can't we use the formula here? Well, there's going to be a change after the first year in 2 ways. The first year he invests the money, he earns some interest in that, it's 3%. He pays tax on that interest earned at a rate of 40%. So 2 things that happen. The tax has to be paid, and in the second year, the rate is going to be different. Now, that's going to affect our calculations. So the formula will only work when you have the same conditions throughout the time that it's being compounded. So this question, it changes, and we need to take that into account. Now, they want us to answer how much will the investment be worth at the end of the first year. Okay, so let's look at that first of all. So we have A, it's going to be, well, he puts in 3,000. So we can still use the formula for this part. Okay, so we have our F is equal to, remember now, P by 1 plus I. So we can use it for this part, we just can't use it as a running total. So we can't use it as for the 2 years. So we're going to be investing, and then our time T here. So we're investing it for 1 year. So the final value after 1 year, then we don't know what F is. I let it be F. I have the principal value. So P again means the principal. And I said that means what we put into it. So you could think of it in 2 ways. P for principal or P for put in. And then we're putting in 3,000, and then that's going to be multiplied by 1 plus I. Now remember, I, there's a catch here, I must be written as a decimal. It will not work otherwise. It only works when I is a decimal. And then we have T, which is going to be the time. Now, we want to know at the end of 1 year, so we put it to the power of 1. And that then, we can use our BIMDAS rules here. We're going to not multiply first. We're going to tidy up the brackets first. So if I tidy up the bracket first here, I'm going to get 1 plus 0.03, which would be 1 plus 0, or 1.03. And that's to the power of 1, which is just itself. And now we can multiply. So we can multiply that out and get our final value. So if we put that into our calculator then, so 3,000, so 3,000 by 1.03, and I get 3,090. Now, that is how much money is in the bank account at the end. So that is the amount in the account. We wanted to know how much the investment was worth. So if we put in €3,000 into the account to begin with, and now we want to get it to figure out how much interest was earned. Well, if there's 3,090 in there now, that must mean that the 3,090 take away what we initially put in. If we do that, we'll be left with the investment, which in this case is going to be €90. So that's how much the investment is worth at the end of the first year. So they haven't asked us to do any tax calculations. They haven't asked us to do anything different, only to figure that much out. Now the next part, it says that Senan calculates that after tax has been deducted, his investment will be worth that much money at the end of the second year. Calculate the rate of interest for the second year. Give your answer as a percentage. Now this part is tricky. There is lots of work we have to do to get the answer out. So remember, if we're to figure out what's coming out at the end, we need to know what we put in. So remember, the interest earned at year 1, that was equal to 90 euros. But remember, in the question, they said that tax of 40% will be deducted each year from the interest earned. I need to take away 40% from that. Now, what I need to do then is there's 2 ways I can think about this. I can say multiply it by 0.4 to get my 40%. So when I do this, I'm going to get 90 times 0.4, which gives me 36 euro. So I'm going to subtract 36 then from 90 because I have to take away the 40%. So I'm going to get 90 minus 36. So I'm left with 54 euro. Or another way you can think about this is if we have 90 euro and we take away 40%, that means we want to be left with 60%. So I could just get 60% of that answer. So I'm going to have 90 times 0.6 and I'm going to get the exact same answer. Right? So it's a different way of calculating this, the exact same thing. You can say multiply by your 40% and take it away, or you can say, well, if I want to take away 40% from something, really what I'm looking for is 60% of that number. Now, that is how much interest he actually has in the account now at the end. So at the beginning of year 2, so let's talk about that. So the beginning of year 2, he would have had at the end of year 1 and the beginning of year 2, the 3,000 euro and 54 euro. So not 90 because he had to pay tax. So he really had 3,054 euro in the account to begin with. So that, remember, is our principal, what we put in. So that's what we're going to put in. We know as well that the final value, so we know that the final value of the investment is given in the question. We know the principal, so I'm just writing down what I have. So the principal, P, is going to be equal to 3,054. We don't know the interest in this scenario, so we do not know what the interest is. That's unknown to us. And finally, the time. So we're in year 2, but we've already done year 1, so there's only 1 year left to do. So I'm going to put 1 in here. So the final value is the one piece I need to go back up to the question to get. So when we read about that, it says that the investment will be worth. So that's our final value, 3145.62. So I'm going to write that here, 3145.62. Now, again, that's after tax. So we'll come back to the tax in a moment. Or actually, we'll need to do it now. We need to do it now because that's after tax is deducted. If we read the question again, it says after tax. So that means that we have to first figure out what was the interest earned from here to here. So I'm going to have to figure out the interest. So that was going to be 3145.62 because that's what he gets at the end of year 2. But remember, he put in 3,054 euro into that. So when I subtract those two, I'm going to get 3145.62, take away 3054, and we're going to get 9162. So 9162. Now that is the interest earned after tax. Now if you remember, a nice way of thinking about this is saying that, okay, if tax of 40% was deducted, what is 91.62 as a percentage then? If that's what the value was after tax. So that is 60%. Because 40% of the whole value has been taken away. So that's actually 60% of the interest earned. So if 60% is equal to 91.62, then 1% would be equal to 91.62 divided by 60. So I'm going to get 1.57 or 1.527, apologies. Multiply that by 100 and I get that 100% of the investment is equal to 152.7. Okay, so 152.7, that's what the investment was, or sorry, the interest was. So the interest at the end of year 2, that's how much he earned. Now, what was the real final value? Because that was actually the final value after tax. So the real final value must have been what we put in plus the interest. So the real final value, or the total final value, that's going to be what I put in. So my 3054, so 3,054 plus the interest earned before tax. So I'm going to add those two together to give me what was my actual final value. So I'm going to add those two together and I get 3206.7. So that's what I've done there, is I've gotten, well, I know that I was taxed, that the interest that they told us we got was actually taxed. It was only 60%. It was less 40% than what it should be. So we figured out what 100% of it was. And now we've added it back on. So that's my real final value here. So now I'm going to set up my equation. So remember, we have F is equal to, so F is equal to P, which is the principal, by 1 plus I to the power of T. So that I is going to be in green. So we'll keep it consistent. So watch the other videos as well if you're not sure about this formula and what it means. We've got F is equal to P by 1 plus I to the power of T. Now, remember, we said T was equal to 1, so we can fill that in. So we can say that we've 1 in the place of T. I'm going to have 1 plus, I do not know what I is, and that's okay. I'm going to leave it as I for a moment. Close brackets. P, I do know what I put in. I do know what my principal is. It's 3,054. And that's going to be what F is equal to. Now we actually also know what F is equal to. It's this guy. So we figured out what it was before tax. So before it was taxed, that's what it should equal to. So now we need to do our BIMDAS rules. So can we tidy up the bracket in this instance? We actually can't, because I and 1 are different things. They don't add together. It's to the power of 1, which means it's just itself on its own. And then it's going to be multiply. Now I want to work on having I on its own. So what I'm going to need to do is get rid of this. And how do I get rid of this if it's multiplied? Well, I'm going to divide. And I'm going to divide both sides by that value. So 3054 and divide this by 3054. Remember, if you divide a number by itself, it becomes 1. So that, both of those are replaced by 1. The next one then we can calculate this out. So we're going to have 3206.7 divided by 3054. And what I get when I do that is 1.05. So I'm getting 1.05 is equal to 1 multiplied by this, which just leaves me with this, to the power of 1, which again is just this value. Now, if I want to get I on its own, I'm no longer multiplying, so I don't need the bracket anymore. If I want to get I on its own, I need to get rid of that plus 1. And how do I get rid of a plus 1? Well, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides here. And what I'm going to get is 0.5 is equal to I. sorry, 0.05 that should say, so we must be careful because that would be a very different interest rate. So we've got 0.05. Now our answer is needed to be in a percentage. So what we'll have to do is, if that's it in decimal form, we multiply it by 100 and we're going to get the value for I. And what we will get here is that multiplied by 100 gives us 5, and it's per 100 now, so percent. So lots of hard work there. You might need to watch it back again and watch it while you do the questions. But take your time, break it into smaller pieces, and it's very manageable when you answer each small step in between.